Ready? So we have our next speaker, Professor Nairita Pal from Coral Center for Oceans, Rivers, Atmosphere and Land Science. She is from IIT Kharagpur, and her talk is on basics of ocean climate models. So she has been working for some time now in ocean processes. So she did her PhD from IISc and then went to Los Alamos for her postdoc, and she worked there for some time and then again came back to share her knowledge with you all. So please, Nairita Pal.
Okay, thanks, Anshuman, for the nice introduction. Okay, so I'll talk about, so the things that I'll cover today is mostly how a typical climate model looks like. I mean, some aspects of the numerical parts of climate modeling. And we already have a very good introduction of what climate models are and why we need the climate models, basically. I won't focus on the why part anymore, because I guess you all know by now that climate science is very important and unavoidable if we are going to move forward, if we want to live, basically. So I'll just go right into the technicalities of it. So this is how a typical climate model looks like. So I think Anshuman already gave a very nice flow chart like this. So most common climate models have these 6 components. They have an atmosphere part, a land part, a river, an ocean, sea ice, and land ice. And all these components interact between themselves. They interact through a flux coupler. So this flux coupler is the interaction part. So what do we mean by this? If something, say, goes wrong in the ocean, that thing will propagate, that thing will affect the atmosphere. How? Through this flux coupler. So representing this flux coupler properly is a very important part of any coupled modeling system. So this is a coupled model because all these components are coupled together via this flux coupler. Now today, I will only talk about this ocean part. I will focus on this ocean modeling part and show you some basic results of the models that I have run over the years. Now, why the ocean? So, can anybody, I think you all know what is the heat capacity of water. Can someone of you give me a value? Sorry, 4 point? Units? Kilo, yeah, it's, yeah, joules, yeah, per Kelvin, right. And the heat capacity of air? This is very low, lower than that. It's about 1/4. It's 1 joule per Kelvin, 1 joule per gram Kelvin, I think, yeah. So this means that ocean has the largest heat capacity of all the components in the climate model. So what does it mean physically? So how, in physical terms, what does it mean? It means that suppose there is a 3-meter thick ocean layer. It holds the same amount of heat and the same amount of, say, carbon dioxide as the entire column of atmosphere above it. So you just need an ocean layer which is 3 meters thick and it has the same amount of heat content. And many other speakers before me, they already talked about carbon dioxide. These are the anthropogenic carbon dioxide and other elements. Okay, so thus we know that ocean contributes a very important part to global warming studies because it is a large reservoir of heat and carbon dioxide. Now, so we have all been hearing about scales. So scale, the magic word, what does it mean? So if we concentrate on the ocean, And there are various scales in the ocean, as we all know. So suppose in 1 meter scale, we can focus on processes which are at 1 meter scale and their gravity waves are important. Again, these are all approximate values, just to give you a sense of the range. If we concentrate on the kilometer scale, convection processes are important. Tens of kilometers, we have eddies, turbulence. Thousands of kilometers, we have gyres. These are large-scale ocean structures. And 10,000 kilometers, we have global oceanic circulation. That is a global world circulation. Now, today I will focus on the last two components. And the previous components have been covered in very detail in the previous talks. So, now the large-scale control experiments, as we all know, are impossible because we cannot do experiment of the whole ocean. In that place, we have to do numerical experiments. So what are numerical experiments? These are ocean models, large-scale ocean models, so that we can predict what will happen in the Earth or the ocean or the atmosphere in the coming years. So prediction is an important component of the of any modeling of the climate system. This ocean climate model development or any climate model development can be divided into 3 stages. So first, there is a vision phase. So this is the most simplest part of these 3 stages, where you have the vision of what the model equations will look like. So you have simple models that we saw in the previous lectures. And then we have the prototype phase. So in this prototype phase, you code up these simple models. You write computer codes. You discretize the equations, write computer codes for these models. But remember, these are simple codes. Suppose serial codes, just to see if the basic things are working properly. And the last phase, which is the most important phase in any climate model development, are realistic models. So what do we do here? Here, the prototype model, which is the raw skeleton, is improved. It is improved again and again. So there are many infrastructure and superstructures added to the simple code. So there are a lot of applied mathematicians, engineers, physicists, chemists working to improve these realistic models. And these realistic models are used in climate predictions, weather predictions, and whatnot. Okay, so there is a nice introduction in this book, The Fundamentals of Ocean Climate Models, by Stephen Griffiths. This is one of the books that anybody interested in model development should read, and a very good book actually. Okay, I'll just go over this quickly. I think you all know about the Navier-Stokes equation by now. So the Navier-Stokes is the basic equation for the ocean models, because it is a momentum conservation equation. So here, this is the advection nonlinear part. And here you have the Coriolis force and then the pressure gradient. I did not write it in detail. You have seen various forms of the Navier-Stokes throughout the different lectures. Okay, now just to explain this figure a little bit, remember that the most important thing in ocean modeling, in realistic ocean modeling, is that we are simulating it on a spherical geometry, on a spherical Earth. And that brings in many sorts of complexities. And there is a a latitudinal coordinate phi, a radius, which can be subdivided into the Earth's radius and then the perturbations over the sea level, the small perturbations that you might have. But okay, we will come back to this later in more detail. But the take-home message from this slide is that the Navier-Stokes is a very complicated set of equations. and it has a large range of length scales. So, like, you know, many people, I think Bishak today was also mentioning that we need to take into account about turbulence, various scales, Anshuman today, Jim, Vishal before that. So due to the large array, due to the large range of length scales, it is important to focus on all the processes which contribute to ocean modeling. But again, we need to focus on the important things of the ocean models. And so we need some approximations, because if we want to simulate the whole Navier-Stokes at one go, it is impossible. So here, there are 4 approximations, and all the ocean models till date are built on these 4 approximations alone and nothing else. So first we have the hydrostatic approximation, then shallow ocean approximation, Boussinesq, and rigid lead or free boundary. I'll talk about it. Some example ocean models are MIT GCM, CESM, POP. So, okay, so the full forms of this I will let you know shortly, but for now it is not important. Just remember that these are very important 4 approximations which are used by all the ocean models till date. So first, hydrostatic approximation. I think you have seen various forms of it again. The basic statement is that the vertical pressure gradient is balanced by the buoyancy. And what does it imply? The implications are important for ocean models. The implication is that the pressure is a linear function of height. So the pressure is rho gz, where rho is the density, gravity, and z is the height of the ocean. So the pressure is dependent on the height alone. Now, what is the drawback? So if we are making this hydrostatic approximation, it is an approximation after all. There should be some drawbacks, right? The drawback is that any 3-dimensional pressure fluctuations are not accounted for, because, you know, it is only a linear function of height of one direction, and the other 2 directions are ignored. So suppose you want to describe sound waves, it is not possible to do with the hydrostatic approximation, because you need 3-dimensional fluctuations to do that. Okay, so this is just a drawback. There are ocean models, I mean, all the ocean models that I gave you examples of, they have both a hydrostatic and a non-hydrostatic part. But today I will not go into that. I will only talk about the hydrostatic part. Next, the shallow ocean approximation. So this slide is a bit dense, but don't worry. I think Jim talked in detail about this thing. Basically, shallow ocean approximation happens when, okay, so just ignore the sentence here. It happens when the height of the ocean is small compared to the radius of the Earth. So we can consider the height of the ocean to be a constant. So this is how I can explain it. So suppose you have a spherical geometry. So can I write? So if you want to find the distance between 2 points on a curved surface, on a sphere, so how do you do that? We calculate the distance. So there is a sphere, and a sphere is a non-Euclidean space, by the way. An Euclidean geometry is a flat surface, but a sphere is non-Euclidean. Now, suppose you have 2 points. Here you have A, and here you have B. And you need to calculate this distance. Normally, what is done is you calculate the distance between the great circles. It is the great circle distance. That is how in ocean modeling we call it. So anybody knows what is a great circle? No? Yeah. Yes, exactly. It is a circle which passes through the center, actually, and it is very commonly used. Sorry, this is a circle. So it is a sphere, right? And you have many, the circumference line, you can have many lines of circumference around the sphere. But the great circles are the circles which encompass the center. Sorry, this this is not the correct way to represent it. So suppose this is the diameter. And this is the great circle along this diameter. So similarly, across this, you will have a great circle. So you can draw great circles at any point. It will be the circumference enclosing the diametrically opposite point. Now, great circles are used in navigation purposes, suppose in airplanes and ships, because they follow the least distance between two places. I mean, the least distance is along the great circle. So this formula for the great circle distance between 2 points is called the Haversine formula. And this, so this is known as the Haversine formula. And this looks like, so you can derive the formula. It has a particular derivation, but the result is here. This is the distance between 2 points on the surface of a sphere. The important thing to note here is that this distance is independent of the radius. I mean, here the radius is a constant. It is not changing. So even if the sea level height changes, it will still remain as capital R and will not change. It is only dependent on the angles. So θ1 and θ2 are the latitude, and λ1, λ2 are the longitudes. So this great circle distance is dependent on the latitudes and longitudes only, and the radius of the Earth is taken as constant. This is the implication of the shallow ocean approximation. Now, next is the Boussinesq approximation. So before we go into that, so we all know the Boussinesq approximation, what it is. But today we will see what does it imply. What does the Boussinesq approximation imply? So for the Boussinesq approximation, again, the density difference is negligible except when there is gravity, right? So now if you write the continuity equation, so can you see here if I write? Can you see here? So what is the continuity equation? Now, if you ignore the density variation, you just get the incompressibility condition. You just get the incompressibility condition. And for an incompressible fluid, the volume remains constant. That is the only implication of the Boussinesq approximation. That is, the mass conservation becomes the volume conservation in Boussinesq models. Non-Boussinesq models have mass conservation only, but Boussinesq models are a little more approximate because they have this volume conservation. So suppose you have an ocean model and the volume of the ocean will remain conserved. It will not change in Boussinesq models. So can anyone tell me what is a possible drawback of this volume conservation in ocean models? So, yeah, okay, no, density, right, yeah, that is fine. So because of density variations will not take place, we have this volume conservation. But say can you think from a global warming point of view, what will it imply? What is a drawback? Yes, exactly. It will not account for sea level rise. Sea level rise are not accounted for. Okay, fine, good. So, and last we had the rigid lead approximation actually. We had that rigid lead approximation. So this is a boundary condition because whenever you are simulating a system, if it is the ocean system, you have to account for boundary forces. So there are two boundaries of an ocean, the upper boundary and the lower boundary. So in many models, the upper boundary is taken as a fixed boundary. That is, sea level perturbations are not allowed. But the thing that I will show here today has a free boundary, that is, sea level perturbations are allowed. Okay, so now this is a climate model that I have worked on at the Los Alamos National Laboratory, and all the results that I show here are from computations carried out in the clusters of the Los Alamos National Laboratory. So it is a great place to work, by the way. So this climate model is known as the energy exascale Earth system model. So I already told you that a climate model has 6 components. This also has 6 components: an atmosphere, land, river, ocean, sea ice, land ice, and all connected together through this flux coupler. Okay, and I worked on the ocean part alone. So just some history. This model is developed by the US Department of Energy, and the bulk of the work was done at Los Alamos National Laboratory. Okay, so some details about this code. Now, the ocean code is known as the Model for Prediction Across Scales Ocean, or MPAS-Ocean. So I don't know the details behind the naming of this, but I guess it is called Model for Prediction Across Scales because it takes into account all the scale variations from eddies, turbulence, whatever, to global circulation. Okay, so what are the salient features of this model? Now, traditionally, MPAS-Ocean is a layered ocean model. It has 60 to 80 layers. We had modified MPAS-Ocean to form a single layer model. That is, single layer is known as a barotropic model. Why? Why did we do that? Because to lower the computational cost. If we have a single layer model, it is still hydrostatic, it is still Boussinesq, okay, it is still shallow ocean or shallow water. So, and with lower computational cost, we can probe more horizontal resolutions without worrying about increasing the computational cost. So these features I will talk about later. We have included some more processes. We have included tidal forcing in here. Okay. Now, so I think during Jim's talk, somebody asked about the gridding, the poles, the singularities. One salient feature of this MPAS-Ocean is that it uses an unstructured grid. And what is an unstructured? So due to this unstructured grid, the singularities are avoided at the poles. So these unstructured grids are basically, you can discretize a space into many regular shapes. That is, basically you can discretize an irregular shape into triangles or tetrahedrons or many polygons, into many regular polygons. And so that is the basics of the unstructured grid. There is an algorithm, this is called Voronoi tessellations, by the way. Using Voronoi tessellations, you can basically discretize the entire space into connected regions. Because of the pole, you cannot use the spherical coordinates because, the Arctic Ocean is just at the pole. And if you want to simulate anything over the Arctic Ocean, then there will be a huge singularity at the pole if you are using spherical polar coordinates. But if you are using an unstructured grid, that singularity is not there, because it can be proved. I don't know the details of the proof, but these Voronoi tessellations divide the space into connected regions. So this is more into applied mathematics. I don't know the details of it, but you can avoid the singularity at the pole. So what we did is we decompose the sphere into icosahedron. Icosahedron is actually a polygon which has 20 faces. Which has 20 faces. So the entire sphere is divided into many polygons, and so this is some details. You need not worry about it. It is called spherical centroidal Voronoi tessellation because we need regularization. So because some areas will need a high resolution, suppose the coastal areas, you need high resolution, but the oceans, the open ocean part will need lower resolution. So we need a regularization, and that is done in a particular way. If you are interested, I can talk about it later. Okay, so now what are some basic verification tests that we did? So for any model, any climate model, even a simple computer code, the first challenge is to cross some verification tests. So verification means that the results should already be known to us from before, and we should check that the simulations agree with the known results. So we simulated an aquaplanet. So what is an aquaplanet? And sorry, somebody said something. Okay, so an aquaplanet is a planet without any continents. It is just a ball of water. So it does not have any continents. So it is a simple geometry just to see that our code is working fine. And we tested the Navier-Stokes. We simulated the Navier-Stokes on an aquaplanet. Now, how did we do it? We initialized a Gaussian profile for a sea surface height. So, okay, so a Gaussian profile is, so here in red, you can see the Gaussian profile. It is like a, a big blob of perturbation. So suppose this is the sea surface height, by the way. Suppose the sea surface height is very high in this point. So it is about 1. So it is very high suddenly. We initialize with it like that. And then we let it relax. We see how it spreads. Okay, it spreads in a spherical direction. Okay, so that is known as a gravity wave, or in Earth system science terminology, it is called a tsunami. That this is a tsunami. That is, you have a huge perturbation, a single perturbation at a particular place, and then it relaxes and spreads. Okay, so and the gravity wave, you can see the wave spreading. It spreads to the ends of the sphere. Now you can calculate theoretically the speed of the gravity waves. If you do, I think you can calculate it using a dimensional analysis. If you write down the wave equation, you can calculate the velocity comes out to be square root gh, where h is the height of the ocean and g is gravity. So theoretically, we took an ocean which is 1,000 meter deep, and we had various resolutions. First, we did simulated an ocean which is 240 kilometers, uniform resolution throughout the globe. That is, each cell is 240 kilometer, right down to 30 kilometers. So for our highest resolution is 30 kilometer across the globe. And theoretically, the speed should be 98.9 meters per second, but in simulations, we had some discrepancy. But remember, the wave equation is a linear wave equation, but here Navier-Stokes is a nonlinear problem. So there is some discrepancy because of that. Otherwise, this agreement is quite close. So we can say that it validates the Aquaplanet test case very well. Okay. Okay. So next, now that we are done with aquaplanets, let's put in some continents. Let's see what happens when there are continents present. Now, what is the most important feature of oceans? Why do we study oceans? Because we study oceans because to study ocean currents. You know, here I have shown the direction of ocean currents. And ocean currents transport heat by mixing. And this heat transport contributes to climate variability. So ocean currents are a very important component to study in oceanography. So what are the factors affecting ocean currents? These 4 factors, these are the most important factors, and all other factors they do not have a significant influence on the ocean currents. So first, Coriolis force, it affects the ocean currents. Then there are tides, winds, waves, because they change the ocean currents in the shape of coastlines and density difference. Okay, so today we will see how ocean tides look like, because tides are very important in ocean currents. So simulating tides are important. Okay. There is some more motivation to study tides. Firstly, to predict correct ocean currents, and then to remove satellite tidal noise from satellite altimetry. So from satellites, we can calculate sea level heights and so on. But the tidal noise sometimes introduces errors in those measurements. And we have to remove those noise to calculate the correct sea level and so on. Okay, so what are tides? Yeah, so suppose here is the moon, here is the earth. And so there's a gravitational pull of the moon, right? Okay, so let me ask, tides, do you think the moon only affects tides? Huh? Sun as well, right? But
the moon is consistent, it's order, but the moon is consistent, but when it's parallel to the sun, it intensifies.
Yeah, but whose effect is stronger, the moon or the sun? Moon. Sun. Moon, right? Why moon? Huh? Much closer. Yes, exactly. Much closer. Yes. So very intelligent set of students, I would say. Nice choice by the organizers. Yeah. Yeah. So it is closer because the gravitational pull goes as 1 by r square. Right. The sun is much farther. Okay. So the moon attracts the water on the side of it, and this produces the high tide. Now on the other side, this is inertia. You know, the water tries to stay in the same place, but so there is a second, this bulge is due to inertia, because here it gets a pull and the far side doesn't get a pull, but nonetheless there is a bulge because of inertia. So these are the high tides. Now on the perpendicular sides, we have the low tides because water is pulled away. Okay. Okay, good. Sorry. Okay. Okay, so let's look at this Navier-Stokes in a global ocean model. So the Navier-Stokes, you have looked at various forms of Navier-Stokes already, but I will bring your focus to the particular equation that we are solving in this model. This is the form of the Navier-Stokes we use. The advection term is divided, the nonlinear term is divided into an advection and, into a vorticity kinetic energy formalism. So this is called the vorticity kinetic energy formalism, because if you combine this term and this term, you get the nonlinear term. Now, this is done to render a vector invariant form. That is, if you say change the basis If you go to some other geometry, this still remains the same. Now then you have the Coriolis force and then the pressure gradient, which is most important here. And these are some drag terms. I will not go into the details of it here. So let's look at the pressure gradient. Okay, for the pressure, we have the hydrostatic approximation. So the pressure is a linear function of height of the ocean. Okay, and then, okay, this is the advection, horizontal advection of height. Just don't worry about it now. Let's look at the pressure gradient. Now, the pressure gradient actually encompasses both the buoyancy and the tidal force. Okay, the tide, because due to tides there is a gravitational potential, and that potential contributes to the pressure gradient force. And what is that potential? That potential has a sine and cosine expansion, because tides are roughly periodic. It is not exactly periodic, just remember it, but it is close to periodic, very close to periodic. So here this is latitude and lambda is longitude. You can expand the tidal potential in this sine and cosine functions. Now in this expansion, there will be expansion coefficients, right? If you expand it, I did not expand it, but you can expand it as a series. And if you expand it in a series, there will be different coefficients. In this study, I am taking 5 major coefficients or constituents. These are called tidal constituents. Okay, this can be related to the, to the diurnal and semi-diurnal. Diurnal means once in a day, semi-diurnal twice in a day, and so on. So these are the five constituents which have the significant effects on this expansion. And we will see how these coefficients look like in our simulation. Okay. Now to do that, we solved the Navier-Stokes using this potential. And now next our job is to see how these coefficients, how to see the spatial structure of these coefficients. So how will we know that our simulation is correct? We need to validate it, right? We need to validate it against satellite data. So these are the satellite data. These are observational data. So here in this plot, I am showing the amplitude, the tidal amplitude and tidal phase. So the colors are the tidal amplitude throughout the world. These are averaged over 3 months. I think these are averaged over 3 months. And these black lines correspond to tidal phases. Okay. So like this, you have a distribution of tidal amplitude and phase. Now our simulations are very close. They look like this, but from these two, you do not know anything if they are right or wrong. The values are roughly similar, but how do you check in more detail? Sorry, I think I missed out one. Okay. Anyway, so I'll talk about that later. So these are the simulations. So what we did is we calculated the error between our simulation and the observations. And the errors I'm going to show you. We had very low errors, but so you can look at this figure on the left. This is the error plot. You know, the deep red areas are high error regions, and these have errors around 0.4. These are in meters, by the way. You can see that there is high errors along the around Antarctica. This is Antarctica. Okay. This is the southernmost part of the world, and this is Antarctica. There are high error regions, high tidal errors around Antarctica in our model. Now, why is that? Now, in Antarctica, there are many ice shelves. So these are huge structures. These are about, tens of meters high. I think about 100 meters sometimes. These are ice shells. So they just project into the ocean. Okay. Now, suppose there is a structure projecting out into the ocean, what will happen? It will exert a pressure, right, on the ocean, which is different. I mean, it is not just buoyancy. Now you have the ice shelf pressure. And these pressures are non-trivial. These are very high. So there are extra pressures due to ice shelves. So, and there is snow accumulation, so on. So there are ice shelf pressure. So we added that extra pressure due to ice shelf in our simulation. So this is the extra ice shelf pressure. We estimated that and we added it. And right after adding it, we saw that these errors go away. So, so this is just to show you how a physics-based, a process-based modeling helps in improving existing models to correctly predict tides, basically. So these are improvements on the tidal model. So now the errors are very less. The tidal errors are less. There are some errors on the coastal regions, but this is because our model is not so much advanced as to handle the coasts. And also we have a single layer model, so the coasts are not well resolved. Okay. And so these are some bar charts that I have. So these are the global root mean square errors. These are all in centimeters. And these are various meshes. This is the highest resolution mesh that we studied, highest resolution mesh. And this is a comparison between no ice shelf pressure and ice shelf pressure. The global error is not so, there is not much change in the global error when ice shelf pressure is added. But if we only focus on Antarctica, on the Southern Ocean, we see there is huge improvement. So this is for Antarctica and this is the tropical regions above. And that is how we improved our tidal model. And yeah, so this is the last slide. I just wanted to give you an idea of how these modelings are done. Yeah. So thank you. Yeah. Here, I think Ashwin. Here. Oh, I see. Okay. So this indicates the tropical region. Less than -60 means and in the Southern Ocean. So you can say the whole latitude ranges from -90 to 90. Okay, so -90 is southern South Pole, +90 is North Pole, and latitudes less than -60 is the Southern Ocean, and anything above -60 is tropics and the northern part. So
for the right figure, did you include ice shelves? Like, did you place ice shelves in those tropical latitudes?
Yeah. So this is the comparison: no ice shelf and with ice shelf. So we ran two simulations. One did not have ice shelf, and one had ice shelf. And we wanted to check that how does this ice shelf pressure improve our simulations. So we did both. We had ice shelf pressure and did not have it. And we saw that when we had ice shelf, there is huge improvement, because you see, this is the error. The error goes down when we have ice shelf.
I'm wondering why the error does not go down that much in the right figure, bottom right.
Yeah, this one, right? This
Yes.
one, right? Because are there ice shelves above 60? Do you see ice shelves in India, around India?
Like, that's why I wondered why you included that figure at all, because there are no ice shelves.
Oh, okay, I see. So this is climate model. So that is what modeling is. You have to make sure that you are doing the right thing, because if I didn't have this figure, I mean, yeah, you are right. I could have left it out.
It's just control.
Yeah. I just to say that this goes in the right direction. Yeah.
Thank you for the talk.
Yeah.
What are the, can you elaborate on the types of subgrid scale models you have used? In this?
Okay, I see. So,
for gravity waves and
yeah.
other.
So we did not use any mixing model as such because we had a one-layer ocean. So there was no mixing model. But so we did not have any subgrid scale modeling, like no AD parameterizations and stuff like that. We just had a viscosity and we just had a viscosity and I think that was it. Yeah.
Okay. So did you add any for the finite volume, or did you add any stabilization for that?
Okay, yeah, the convergence plots I did not include. We studied convergence, because this one, right? Yeah. So what we saw is that when we go up to very high resolutions, so here suppose. So these are different resolutions on the finite volume mesh. Okay, this is 64. We went up to about 8 kilometers uniform or 45 to 5. We saw that there was not much difference in the global statistics between this 16 and 8. The difference was not very much. So this is like a convergence study, you can say. But for the 45-5, there was a huge improvement because there was something else also in a little different. So we had something called the self-attraction and loading of tides. That is again a different process. I will not talk about that. That's why it's improved. But for the first four curves, you can see this is how the convergence looks like.
Okay. And in the Aquaplanet, in the Aquaplanet simulation, so do you observe that this wave is axisymmetric for all the, like, throughout its travel?
Throughout when it is traveling. Yeah, it's on a sphere. So yeah, it's traveling on a sphere. It's symmetric on us. It has spherical symmetry. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, it's a nice talk. I just want, because your one layer model does it have a currents or no?
So this is, it does not have ocean currents actually, no.
So
ocean currents
only is the tide forcing?
It is only tidal forcing, and yes, it is only
because
tidal
once you have a
forcing.
current, maybe you get more improvement.
Yes, that is true. There was a plan to include currents, but it is not done here yet. No.
A question?
There is one question. No, please give him first.
Thanks for the talk. In the Navier-Stokes global ocean model, could you explain more about the pressure grading? Like, how did you expand it? I didn't understand that.
Okay, the tide part. Okay. This one?
In the next slide you wrote, this equation. Like, how did?
Oh yeah. So this is so this is a force term, right? The force comes from a gradient of a potential. Okay. Here I'm writing down the potential. Actually, I'm writing down the tidal potential. In addition, there is buoyancy, of course, that I did not write here, but it is included here. Yeah, the buoyancy. Yes. So because of the tidal attraction between the sun, moon, and earth, the tidal potential can be decomposed into sine and cosine series like this. You can expand it into a sum of terms because this is a series. You can expand it. So, the previous tidal modelers, I have cited the papers actually. So they have included this expansion, and this works very well for the tidal models. So this is from the gravitational attraction of the sun, moon, and earth. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, a question from here.
Yeah.
Maybe a naive question, but if Aquaplanet model works best for like 120-kilometer resolution, why do we move like to the final resolution then?
Okay. For the Aquaplanet, right?
Yeah, it has worked, I think, the best at 120 kilometer.
Yeah, so yes, this is a good question. So that is what I was saying, that there is a discrepancy, but this discrepancy is not because of the resolution, but because of the fact that the Navier-Stokes is a nonlinear model. But this C equal to square root of GH is a linear solution. But in Navier-Stokes, we have to consider nonlinear terms, and in high resolutions, those nonlinear effects become important. And
Thank you.
so the accuracy goes down. But good question. Yeah.
I'm asking in a very generic manner, the unstructured grid that you so like we saw the Voronoi cells, it is like it has different grid resolution, right? Like how do you say that we have to use this particular grid resolution for one grid, and that because it is like one is simple, like one is a different polygon and another is a different polygon. How to know what to give the grid resolution?
Yeah, good question. So that is what is done. That is a regularization. So this spherical centroidal Voronoi tessellation does that. Basically, you convert everything to Voronoi polygons and you come into the center of mass. That's how, if you see here, these are regular structures. So that is done using a regularization technique, which I can tell you later. Actually, it's a bit involved. I mean, it involves, those are called Delaunay triangles, I think those are called. So using that regularization technique, you can convert this irregular pattern that you are seeing into a regular grid structure. Yeah. So that's it.
Hello, ma'am. It's you've given a very nice talk. So in the Aquaplanet simulation, the test case, were you using a single wave for surface waves, or you were using a wave field?
Sorry, you mean?
You were using the surface wave, several cavity waves for the test case.
Yes.
Is it a single wave or a wave field?
That is a field. That is a field. I mean, that is space dependent, but a Gaussian field. So I initialize it with a Gaussian profile and let it spread over time. It just spreads over time. Where is the
so for the since you have said that this is a tsunami case, we cannot consider this as a soliton, can we?
Yes, so that is a very good question. People have done it. You can actually, but I have not looked into that. You can do that here. Yeah.
And regarding the unstructured mesh, is it like an adaptive mesh refinement thing? Are you following?
Yeah, that is like that, but much more sophisticated, right? Because it ensures the conservation laws and so on. And it is done to avoid the singularity at the poles.
Right.
Just any adaptive mesh won't avoid singularity. For that, you have to have a connected structure. So a spherical polar grid has a singularity, but this kind of mesh is connected all throughout. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Just a small question. In our lab also, we are actually working on a similar MPAS atmosphere model.
Okay, good.
So
okay.
After doing for the post-processing part, which software do you prefer?
Which software?
Or tools for the post-processing part? After the mesh is created, the simulation, the model has been run.
Yeah.
For that particular.
Yeah, so I have used many actually. I mean Python. So there are many Python Cartopy packages are there, and then the NetCDF, of course, the NetCDF things, and ParaView. For quick visualization, you can use ParaView. Actually, that's very good, just for quick visualizations.
Because while running the WRF model, then we get CTL files, and in that latitudinals are there. Everything is sorted.
Yeah.
But for the mesh part, it is difficult to give coordinates. So we need to first convert it into a latitudinal type of data, or we can directly use it.
Okay, yeah. So that is a thing. Yeah, you have to actually convert it into a lat-long data. You can also split the data to get the lat-long files. The Shornali, I think, has used very much of, a lot on that. So you can use simple Python to get the lat long data if you have a netcdf file and so on. And but in ParaView, I think you can plot it in any file. In ParaView, you can just use ParaView, yeah. But for computation, if you are doing any computations, if you are locating, then use just Python because it is open source, free, and you can run it on any machine.
The data that we got was netcdf4. So I was using grad software. It wasn't reading it.
Oh, okay.
So I had to convert it into some other netcdf format.
Very specific detail.
Yeah. So we can talk about it later.
Yeah. Let's talk it here. And
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. You can do it.
So
actually.
we meet at right away. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Thank you.